Hello and welcome to Chainbreakers. We are a Christian recovery program that focuses on the road to recovery using the 12 steps to recognizing Jesus as our higher power. We use various recovery materials including the Bible, AA Big Book, NA Basic Text, Celebrate Recovery, and other relevant sources. The Chainbreakers experience allows you to be changed, transformed, and renewed by God working in your life. As you work and study the 12 steps and share your experience, strength, and hope with others, you will step in to the future that God has planned for each one of you. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of the 12 steps, you will experience a cognitive change in your thinking. This is essential because the problem centers in our minds. The result of the spiritual awakening is sobriety and freedom from addiction. We believe that through the 12 steps and the power of Jesus Christ that we can be chain breakers. If you are not Christian, please know that you're wanted and still welcomed. We are accepting donations to help pay for the expenses that will help us be able to boost our message on Facebook. This helps us reach a larger audience in sharing the message of hope, recovery, and the gospel. We will post the link in the comments section that will take you directly to the church's donation page. And we will also post the address in the comments also. Please choose Chainbreakers in the fund section. Our goal is to collect $14 a week to meet weekly expenses. You can donate or not. We still appreciate you being with us. Okay, so let's get started. Welcome to our Blending the Bible and the Big Book Step Study. This week will be our discussion on Step 4. This is a part 1 of 2, and today we will be discussing resentments. Next week we'll discuss the fear and sex inventory. My name is Amanda W., and this is Chris G.
Hi.
AA's 12 steps have been used by millions of people to overcome many different types of addictions. We are keeping the AA readings intact as written, but we think you can easily relate to the problems and the solution, whatever your drug of choice may be. Our primary purpose is to carry the message to the alcoholic and the addict who still suffers. Another reason for this study is for participants to learn, practice, and teach the steps laid out in the AA's Big Book and broaden and deepen it in their walk with Jesus. My co-chair and I will alternate readings of scriptures and the narration. Feel free to comment at any time because we would like to make this as interactive as possible. Also, feel free to ask questions. We know that meetings are shut down around the world right now, and with that being said, we do have an announcement. Next week, Chainbreakers will be meeting in person at GCC for their Chainbreakers recovery meeting. Unfortunately, our family counseling will not be open as of yet, but we will be meeting in person next week. We will also have a Facebook Live with the speakers to protect the anonymity of everyone else. So we'll have the speakers on Facebook Live, so if you can't make it here, if you're not available, you can come and share the message with us. We hope you can join us. We will begin with the Big Book directions on page 29. If you're following with the PDF format, we're going to start with page 29 and then jump at the end to the biblical verses. And we'll wrap up with the correlating scriptures on page 27. If you're following along with us on the Blending and Big Book PDF, which is right here that we have in front of us. If you don't have it and would like us to send you one, please private message us and we will be able to send you one. And we are going to start now in the middle of page 29. And like I said, we are on the 4th step, which is all based off resentments, which is definitely the #1 offender for any alcoholic. Okay, so page 29. We are posting a picture now of the resentment worksheet we will be discussing today. Okay, so the Big Book authors tell us that we need to do right after we've made our 3rd step decision.
Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us had never attempted. Through our decision, step 3 was a vital and crucial step. It could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us.
Exactly, and that's on page 63, paragraph 4, lines 1 through 2. And with that, faith without works is dead. Please note that the Big Book author said at once, so immediately. After immediately taking step 3, you need to launch into step 4. This means take step 4 immediately after step 3. The intent and purpose of the 4th step is plain and simple. We have to identify those things in ourselves that have been making us restless, irritable, and discontent, therefore blocking us from God. This step also shows us how to deal with them. There are things that we build up, even when we just stuff them. Eventually, they create so much discomfort that finding relief by picking up seems like a good idea at the time. All alcoholics and addicts have a definite need for a thorough self-analysis, a sort of self-appraisal, so a thorough house cleaning of sorts. Other people have certainly analyzed us, appraised us, criticized us, and even judged us. It is a good idea to assess ourselves calmly and honestly. Because I know for me, when I was writing my 4-step resentment list, I was getting upset because I was like, this person did me wrong, this person did this person did that. So I had to take it with a calm approach so I wouldn't have it based off feelings.
Yep.
All alcoholics and addicts have a definite need for a thorough self-analysis, a sort of self-appraisal, like I said before. Other people have certainly analyzed us and appraised us, criticized us, and even judged us. We are going to establish an open line of communication with God by addressing those aspects of our personality that we have been keeping from Him. The Big Book authors say that liquor is but a symptom, and I always say that in my line of work. I always let my clients know that liquor is just a symptom of your disconnection with God, with Jesus, and your underlying issues.
Yeah. And liquor kept me in the dark. It kept me lonely. It kept me isolated.
Restless, irritable, discontent.
Fear of being found out. Yeah.
Exactly. Sure, alcohol and drugs cut us off from God, but once we stopped drinking and using, many times we were separated from God because of our defects. Without the drink or drug to anesthetize us, our defects often become more glaring and difficult to manage. So once we put the drink and drug down, we still have all these glaring defects of character that definitely keep us even further away from our higher power.
Yeah. And I had an intimate personal relationship with God before I came into to AA. He kind of pushed me into it. I was like, come on, you and me, God, we can do this, right? But he's like, no, you need the fellowship of AA.
Yeah.
You need the 12 steps, because what I'm about to give you, I want you to give back.
Exactly.
And so I'm like, okay. So I asked God to hold my hand and walk me through this process into the light. And so I did. I really had to trust God to walk me through being good to myself, really being honest to myself, because that was being good to myself. It made me feel, He helped me to understand that there's a difference between being convicted and being condemned.
Yes.
And, condemnation is from Satan, and convicted is that loving God that says, I just want you to be your best self. I want you to be happy, joyous, and free. So trust me and let me walk you through this process calmly and honestly. And it really does boil down to trust. And I had a hard time trusting people and even myself. So I was broken enough where I'm like, okay, God, I trust you. And it's just been a very rewarding experience ever since.
Especially because you're so low, you have no one else to trust, and that's your last resort. Because we push God out for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Sure, alcohol and drugs cut us off from God, but once we stop drinking and using, many times we're still separated from God because of our defects. Without the drink or drug, our defects often become glaring and difficult to manage. As we go through the next several pages, let's keep our objective in mind so that we don't get bogged down or sidetracked by details. Please try to keep it simple as you go through the process. Before we get into any of the details on how to complete the step, we want to emphasize a couple of things. First, there's no right or wrong way to do this inventory. Second, the inventory should be done quickly.
Yes, I agree with the word quickly. The very first time I did it without a sponsor. I don't recommend that. And And I really like to get into the self-loathing and the self-pity, and I didn't do it quickly, and I think I drank more.
Yeah, the
So
pour me
I
a
don't
drink.
recommend that you do it without a sponsor. It wasn't pretty.
No.
But yeah, anyway, so we went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. And when we were finished, we considered it carefully. That honesty, it really does set you free to be honest. You think that, it's good to hold stuff back, but it really isn't. It really, it just kind of keeps you more stuck in the dark and keeps you from being your best self.
Exactly. It keeps you more sick, really.
It keeps you, yes.
Do not strive to do it perfectly. The only criteria for a searching and fearless. Just write what comes to you and put it to pen to paper. Most likely other things will come up too. When they do, you can run it through the steps at the time. So I know for me, when I started doing the resentment list, I had people popping up that I didn't even realize I had a resentment for. I started, it was like a runaway train when I first started writing it, because it was like the major hitters, I would say, in my resentment list, and then it was like this second grade teacher, like things just started flowing when they put pen to paper. It's such a freeing feeling.
Yeah, you don't realize how much has built up over the years and how much you've stuffed.
Yep. Okay. Remember that this is not an exercise of beating yourself up. The Big Book's 11-step inventory tells us something that applies here as well.
Be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection. Just write it out. Fill out your worksheet one column at a time. Inventory is fact-finding and a fact-facing process. It is an effort to discover the truth.
So posted on our page in the comments is the resentment worksheet and the prompt sheet. You can print out if you have it to use for later, or you can just follow along. We can go from there. And that is
resentment page.
Yes, the resentment page.
Also, let them know that I'm having trouble posting it. So
Okay.
It's on our page.
Okay, we are having a little trouble posting it, so it is on our webpage,
Yeah,
on our
it's on
Facebook page. So you can always Chain Breakers Recovery, so we can go from there. And then we also have, like I said, she showed the resentment page, and then we also have the prompt page, which is also correlated. Let me grab that real quick. Our prompt page, which has our selfish, dishonest, all that fun stuff. Okay. So one worksheet is the big, let me organize my papers a little bit. Okay, one worksheet is the Big Book's way of getting rid of resentments, along with a prompt sheet, which we just showed you. Alcoholism and addiction cause our thinking to become distorted and twisted. This prompt sheet helps us identify where we have been selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and or afraid with each person on our resentment list. So first we write down the resentment, so all the people that done us harm, any kind of anger, resentment that we have against anyone, and that's when we start looking to see where we get to our side of the street to see where we've been selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, things like that. After finishing our resentment worksheet, we will more clearly see our defects of character. After completing our fears and sex conduct worksheets, which they will do next week, we will have a strategy on how we can understand and better manage our character defects with God and Jesus' help.
Yay. Thank God for God's help. It was so wonderful to know that I didn't have to do this by myself. And not only with a sponsor, but to really know that I trusted God enough to know that He knew better than I did, because my thinking was so distorted and so negative. I needed to trust my higher power, which is God, for me to walk me through this process and to
Hold our hand through it.
absolutely
Yeah.
to hold my hand and really to understand that I'm not a bad person. I just had some a lot of not good truth in me. So He brought out a lot of stuff in me before before I was really ready for it.
Yeah.
But it was all good.
And that's why the 4th step is where it's at in the 12-step program, because we have to get that connection with our higher power, with who I call Jesus, who I call God. We have to get that connection to kind of ease us into the 4th step, because that's a hard-hitting step.
Yeah.
That's kind of where all your blaring character defects are on paper. you know, and it's hard to handle unless you have the help or support of the fellowship, a sponsor, and God.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. In all cases, on each form, you complete each column before you go to the next column. You go down the column rather than across. So instead of going across the column, you go down. Please let God guide you through the inventory process. If you do, you'll find that the fourth step is quite easy and straightforward. Just take the time to complete it as many of the worksheets you need to. So don't worry about how many pages are. I think my first fourth step I had about 30 resentments on there. So it doesn't make a difference. Just make sure you're fearless and thorough from the gate. The Big Book breaks down into 3 sections: resentment, fear, and sex. It provides a way to stop letting anger dominate our lives. It gives us a godly strategy to deal with fear and the instruction on how to have healthy thoughts and conduct toward others. So the resentment worksheet. The Big Book authors directed us to address our resentments.
Resentment is the number one offender. Resentments block me from the light, from being able to see what's true. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else, and it stems all forms of spiritual disease.
Exactly. And we saw with steps 1 through 3 that, you know, that we have been mentally and physically ill, but the allergy and the obsession, that we had been spiritually sick at that point.
Yeah, and the resentments are those re-feelings. You're feeling it over and over and over again,
They've been
and it's
suppressed,
eating me
yeah.
alive. It's kind of like that hamster on a wheel, you know, it just keeps going and going and going and going. Well,
Yeah.
I have one of those in my head, and finally he's resting.
Yeah. I think I had a circus in mine, so yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The first
So-
3 columns are in the following paragraph.
All right, so in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper and make sure that anything that you're feeling, that you put it down on paper, because if you don't, you just get to keep it and you get to go through it all over again. We listed people, institutions, and principles with whom we were angry. And you could, well, I'm not even going to go there. We asked ourselves why we were angry. In most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore. We were burned up.
Exactly. So for column 1, you have to sit there and list all the people, institutions. So say something happened when you were actively using with the courts. You had a criminal background, you know, that would probably be on someone's resentment list, because we're realizing that the courts have taken our children away, whatever the case may be.
Yep.
So we have institutions and principles. You know, a lot of people come up in different religious structures, and we have to have rules that we have to follow that we don't agree with. So even those rules can be on your 4th step. So with column 2, what was the cause of your anger? So the first column, you write their names. So they even have it in the Big Book. Mr. Let me see what page it is in the Big Book on the How It Works
Brown?
section. Yeah, Mr. Brown, he flirts with my wife, or whatever the case may be. So that's what you're going to do in the second column. You're going to write what was the cause of your anger. And in the third column, what instinct did it affect? So did it accept your...
Their basic human instincts are affected. Yep.
Yep, perfect. Okay, so in column 2, next to each name of the person, institution, or principle, write down in point form, so bullet points is how I did it, the various reasons you have put down the name of the column. So the why that happened. Don't write a book on it, just short, sweet, to the point. You're not going to be like, well, this happened, and this happened, and this is why I reacted this way, or this is why he reacted whatever way. Be specific. Write down every little point that occurs to you. You're not telling a story. You're just putting down reasons. Write enough down so that you understand it. No one else needs to see it. It's just for your purpose.
Yes.
So like I said, in the worksheet that we have, do you have a copy of that worksheet?
This one?
Yeah. So it even breaks it down with the columns and everything right in the worksheet.
Yes.
Okay. If completing the in column 2 next year, okay. If completing the first 3 columns, we can see a simple process. Notice that we're moving from the names of people and things that bother us to what it is about them that bothers us, to how those things that bother us are affecting us and our instincts. Okay, so now we're on page 32 of the PDF. At this point, it's becoming obvious why our minds are clouded. Things haven't gone our way, and that's where our selfishness. Things have to come my way. This is where our selfishness and our ego, which is easing God out, comes into play. And they're affecting how we feel about ourselves. So self-esteem. I know when I was actively using self-esteem was a huge issue for me.
Yes.
Our sense of security, what we want in our out of our life, and our personal and sex relations. Plus, we're full of fear. No wonder we want to drink. These things are controlling us. Why? Because we're not in control. The Big Book authors emphasize the resentment separate us from God. We must eliminate them if we are to have and maintain a spiritual awakening.
So when I was reading this, these things are controlling us. They really did control my thinking, and I really had a hard time seeing what was really true until I had done the step work, and God had really led me out of the wilderness into some freedom. So now I am more in control when I ask God to first lead and guide my thoughts, because where my thoughts goes, that's where my actions go. So first thing in the morning, I ask God to lead me and guide my thoughts, and I have a much more peaceful, constructive day.
Exactly.
So it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile. And that stinking thinking is what I call it. It keeps me from being my best self and getting out there and being a blessing to others, even if that means just to smile at somebody, because when you're hurting inside, that's gonna show. You know, what's in the heart comes out of the mouth, or you can see it in your eyes. Like, you're just sadder, and so you're not really being your best self and being a light. So it's worth it just for that reason.
Exactly.
You just want to be your best self and be happy. So, but with the alcoholic, whose hope is in the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. We found that it is fatal, for when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns, and we drink again. We drink because we want to get out of our stinking thinking thoughts. We don't know how to shut those negative thoughts down, so we think the drink is going to help us.
Fix it.
Until it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because the next day always comes.
Yep.
So, if we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison. And alcohol becomes poison to us. It's like drinking acetone. So, yuck. We turned back to the list, for it held the key to the future. We prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, and that fancied, oh my goodness, I had such a creative mind in making up stories that were not even happening.
No.
But I would make a mountain out of a molehill, and I'm sure you've heard that before. And now, did you ever see that whack-a-mole? Like, I literally bought that game so I could just whack-a-mole whenever I was feeling those resentments and anger coming up. So,
That's good therapy, though.
well, you know what? I like to laugh and I like to have a good time.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of funny. It seems silly,
great.
but it's fun for me. So in that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had power to actually kill, and it really did. It killed my love of life. Yeah, I no longer knew how to enjoy my life and the people in my family. Like the people I loved the most, I didn't know how to enjoy them.
And it's crazy because once you get sober, it's like
I'm
the
like-
entertainment and the happiness is tenfold more.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
I'm like, oh my gosh, I can enjoy my kids now.
without having a drink.
But they're gone now.
Yeah, exactly.
They're out of the house. But yeah, so it's pretty crazy. So how could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? I know how. Give the resentments to God. We could not wish them away any more than alcohol.
We cannot wish these resentments away. We need to turn around our thinking, look at them in a different perspective, and ask God for help. On our worksheet between column 3 and 4, we are directed to say the resentment prayer. For each individual, our resentment list. The prayer is for us and for God's help to change our perspective. So we're playing the victim role at that time. You know, we're thinking that everyone did me wrong and this is what I have to do. So we need to pray over it to get a whole new perspective on what our resentments are.
Yeah.
So do you want to read the resentment prayer?
This was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. We asked God to help us, show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended us, we said to ourselves, "This is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done."
So at that point, we have to understand that the people that hurt us are spiritually sick as well. You know, maybe their connection with Jesus or God is not as strong.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely helps me to have more compassion and empathy for that person. So I can let go, let God. I love that.
Okay, we're on to page 33. And I apologize if I'm sitting so close, I really can't see. My eyes are getting a little
I
old.
can read.
Sure, go ahead.
So there are people in this world whom you resent. And this is a side note to victims. Those who have harmed you or others, they have the equivalent of pain or mental disabilities in their spiritual life. They are damaged and sad people. And what is even sadder about them is that they take their pain out on others. I heard this, hurting people hurt people. And that made so much sense to me. Like if somebody's hurting in their heart and they have a hardened heart, what's in their heart is going to come out of their mouth, and it may not have anything to do with you, but it's what's going on in them. So that has really helped me tremendously. The more they do that, the worse they get. The more harm they inflict on others, the more difficult it will ever be for them to change. They have less than an opportunity than we do to change and become better people. As an alcoholic or addict, our only hope is a spiritual awakening. That's their only hope too. We have the hope of the 12 steps. They may never have that hope at all.
Exactly, and that's our whole premise of the 12-step program, is have that spiritual awakening. And to the victims, they don't have, I know there's Al-Anon and every kind of service out there, but they may not have the 12 steps to go through their life.
Yeah.
So we're truly blessed to have the 12 steps as a part of our daily life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It is a solution. The 12 steps is God's gift to anyone who wants to be free. Free to love, free to give love, free to receive love, instead of living in fear of people. The right attitude to take to them, no matter what harm they may have done to us or to others, is one of pity. This kind of pity is not one of superiority, but one of compassion. You have a spiritual sickness too. If you didn't, you wouldn't need the 12 steps to recovery. In many cases, this may be enough to get you to realize how spiritually sick and pitiful they are. And I heard something in Joyce Meyer Bible. It says you can be pitiful or you can be powerful.
Oh, wow.
And I'm definitely choosing powerful.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll take it from here. So with some of our resentment lists, you may come to the conclusion that you were overreacting and weren't that sick and didn't do that much harm. In other cases, you might realize that they aren't spiritually sick. They just didn't agree with you. Column 4 clearly tells us that our core defects are selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened. The prompt sheet, which we showed you earlier, will help you see your part for each person on your resentment list. Put a dot next to each statement that fits for each person in each category. It probably won't take you long to see a pattern. I think I saw my pattern within the first 3 people.
Yeah.
On my selfish, dishonest, it was all the same characteristics.
They weren't following my script.
Nope.
Oh, anyway, that was funny. Referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly, and were willing to set these matters straight.
In the resentment worksheet, we are discovered that we have 4 character defects. 1, selfish. We went our way, regardless of our motives. 2, dishonest. We deceive others, ourselves, and or don't tell the truth when the truth should be told. 3, self-seeking. The impact on what's important, not the impact on others. And 4, frightened. We are full of fear.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show the prompt sheet now. You guys, if you print it out, that's great. If you want to grab it. We're going to go down some of the prompts in the prompt sheet just to kind of share on those just a little bit. So let me grab the prompt sheet.
This one?
Yes, I'll grab mine. Gonna start sharing
Just read this.
everything? Okay, so some of the prompt sheets that they have is selfish. They didn't follow my script, like you said before. We're trying to be the actor to run the show. You didn't do it right, so that's an excuse for me to drink. They should have, the should haves, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but that's their own personal things. It's what we need to do.
And a big one is wanting to control.
Control and enjoy, as my sponsor always says.
Yeah, I
Control and
like-
enjoy.
I wanted to control.
And the funny thing is that, these resentments come out in selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, not only in our drinking careers, but in our relationships and everything
Absolutely.
like that, which they will cover next week with the sex inventory and the fears and everything like that. Some of the dishonest, not seeing or admitting where I was at fault. Because I know for me, when I was drinking, I was not honest to anything. I would lie to you till I was blue in the face, you know? So the spiritual principle behind step 1 is honesty. So for me to get honest right off the bat was definitely hard, but...
And always blaming others.
the blame
Oh,
game.
the blame game was terrible.
You were drinking at people that did you wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And motives. Not being clear about my motives. Not expressing feelings. And expectations.
Oh,
I think
Yes.
that's a biggie for
That
a lot of
everyone.
us is
Yeah.
expectations and perfectionist was another big one of mine.
Exactly. So self-seeking, we have manipulating others to do my will. So I was always controlling, manipulating others to suit my need because it goes back to the selfish, trying to control and enjoy the show, trying to make everything perfect. Manipulate so I can gain, which is selfish.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then we also have acting superior. I always thought my problems were worse than yours, or my problems were better with yours, or I wasn't that bad. So getting to that point was definitely tough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And a big one that somebody just said at one of the meetings, and I went, oh my gosh, they either looked up at somebody or they looked down at somebody. They didn't recognize that they didn't look at everybody on the same playing field.
Yeah.
It's like, we're all God's children.
Yeah.
And that was a aha moment for me. So I really needed to hear that.
Exactly. Frightened. That was a huge part. People's opinions. I was always a people pleaser. So any kind of opinions that people had, I would kind of shelter and stuff in because I wanted to try to please everyone.
Yeah.
But the only one I have to please is God and myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Exposure, especially when I was embarrassed. If I was embarrassed about something, exposure was huge for me. I didn't want people to see the true me.
Yes.
Yes.
Mine was inadequacy, not enough.
Yes.
I never felt like I was enough. And who knows where that all comes from, but it is what it is. It's what that stinking thinking did to me.
Exactly. Do you want to start reading? We're on page 34.
Okay, so So those are some of the fun things that you get to find out about yourself. It's very helpful, though, I'll tell you that. It's very helpful
Especially
and
when you
very
do it.
freeing.
To the fifth step, when you have that freeing
To
experience.
really get to know
Yeah.
yourself. You know the good and the bad.
Yes.
It's okay. It's okay, and I'm on my way. So take note of these 4 defects. A similar list will come up further in step 4. These, as well as anger, will come up in step 10, step 11, and more or less, all of these have manifestations in each category. They're all fear, no matter how you look at it. It's all under that umbrella of fear.
Yeah.
Past experience has shown that as you put dots on the prompt sheet, you will probably see a few patterns that repeat themselves over and over in your relationships. You will probably be saying, oh, ditto for that person, or see above.
Or just put an arrow from above. That's what I would do.
Yeah, so when those patterns crop up, you immediately know what's going on. You're like, oh, God, can you take care of this for me? I'm having another one of my dishonest moments.
Exactly, and that's where 6 and 7 start coming in. The
Yeah.
shortcomings is character defects. You start making that list of your character defects for 6 and 7.
It's wonderful
Yeah.
that God shows up in our weakness.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
exactly.
yeah, can you take that? Because I really want to enjoy my day.
God, I need you real quick. Can you take that from me?
It's a wonderful thing.
Exactly.
You'll see that your character defects have truly blocked you off from the sunlight of the Spirit. As you can tell, like I'm full of light, right?
Yes.
I hope. You'll begin to understand how important it is to have these character defects diminished or removed. Notice what we haven't done. We haven't listed 40 character defects like jealousy, lust, gossiping. Oh, that's a
big
biggie.
one.
We don't even realize.
Yeah.
Pride, control freak, and things like that, along with all the details for each one of those. We've really gone beyond that by focusing on something entirely different. How our need to have things go our way has created situations that have baffled us, confused our minds, and controlled our thinking.
And that's where our ego comes in. We start easing God out of our lives. Just
Yeah,
like- yes.
EGO, easing
God
God
out,
out.
yep.
Isn't that awesome?
I love that acronym.
Well, it's not awesome, but yeah.
It's a good saying. Notice as well that this is very constructive and positive process. We're not beating ourselves over the head in horrible things we have done. On the contrary, we're finding out what we can do to improve ourselves. So we're
Yeah.
kind of seeing the bad qualities to get rid of them, to see how we can fix them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of power in that.
Yes. Okay, so if you use this the way of doing step 4, you can see clearly how these 4 character defects play themselves out in your entire life. Consider resentment. It's basically that the past didn't work. A resentment is something we re-feel when we think about it. So I know for me, a lot of the resentments that I have, some of my personal resentments had to do with things with my parents or my sister or people I was in relationships with, and I had to think of it in a whole different perspective and kind of play my part, that maybe I wasn't the ideal person that I made myself for, that egotistical self, you know. So those are some of the personal ones that I experienced with my parents, with, you know, friends, relationships, things like that. So those are some of the personal ones I experienced. Yeah, for sure.
I found it was very freeing to know that I only had to be concerned about my part in everything. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I don't have to take care of their problems too. That was so freeing. I'm like, okay. And in my defects, I could just go to God. I'm like, God, I need your help with my stinking thinking again, so I can go and enjoy my day.
Exactly.
That was very freeing to have
Yep.
to have that awareness.
Yeah, keeping our side of the street clean. You
Yeah.
know, we don't have to worry about your side of the street as long as we're in connection with God and Jesus, and that our side of the street is clean. We're good to go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't have to worry about the other person anymore.
No.
Yay.
So now we're going to flip back to page 27, where we have the spiritual quotes that we will get back into. And we're going to alternate reading them, and we'll tell you where they're at and things like that.
I got to tell you, when my sponsor did this, put this together, and I was seeing the correlation between the Big Book and the Bible, I got so excited because I have had so many awesome God winks, great experiences with God, and seeing how He showed up and it just did some amazing work in my life. And so I trust God to the best of my ability, most days. And so to see that correlation between the big book and the Bible got me so excited to really want to stay with the step work, because I could see that this was so God-driven that I wanted to help others to, to understand that God just wants a relationship with you, right?
Exactly.
He's not a religion. He's like, I'm your Heavenly Father. I created you for a purpose, and I want you to enjoy life and love me, love yourself, love others. So anyway, I can go on forever.
These are some of the verses that concur, like Chris was just saying, with the need for a self-inventory. So all these Bible verses are going to go hand in hand with the fourth step. They identify things that block us off from God's Spirit, so from our higher power, from God, from Jesus. Psalms 139:23-24. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me to a way of everlasting. So it's asking right there to test me, show me if there's any kind of, offensive ways in me.
Yeah. I don't even know if I knew the word anxiety or anxious. All I knew is that my heart would always be like, I would just get the sweats and all that.
Yep.
And so I never even knew those words until I started getting into this. I'm like, oh, is that what I'm feeling?
Yes.
And it's all fear-based. And God doesn't want us to be fearful. He wants us to be faithful.
And loving.
Yeah. Ephesians 4:17-31. So I tell you this, and insist on it in the Lord, that you must no longer live as the Gentiles do, in the futility of their thinking. They are darkened in their understanding and separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to the hardening of their hearts. Having lost all sensitivity, they have given themselves over to sensuality so as to indulge in every kind of impurity, and they are full of greed.
Wow.
That, however, is not the way of life you learned. When you learn about Christ and were taught in him in accordance with the truth that is in Jesus, you were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self. And your old self is that old stinking thinking.
Yep, that dishonest, self-seeking.
Which
Selfish.
is being corrupted by...
For the Psalms you were just reading?
Yes.
What was that? What was the,
Ephesians 4:17-31.
okay, that
Yes.
was the question.
Oh, great. Perfect. Thank you guys for asking questions. I love it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
So to put off your old self, okay, those are those old habits, those old patterns of thinking, which is being corrupted by deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your mind. And the way you do that is to have God constantly renew your mind. You ask God every morning, God, direct my thinking. And that's how you create that new attitude. It's going to God every morning and saying, direct my thinking. I want to be happy, joyous, and free. Show me the way.
It even shows you that in the big book, 84-86.
Yes.
Upon awakening, it gives you clear-cut instructions on how to get your mind clear and get ready for the day.
See, God knew what he was doing. So you read the word and it renews your mind and it changes your attitude. And that worked in my life. It absolutely changed my attitude. Because I was full of fear and stinking thinking. So 24, and to put on the new self created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. 25, therefore each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. And I do understand that with, oh my goodness. Forgiveness is just so important. And we do have a choice. We do have a choice to forgive and walk in love. Instead of staying in that stinking thinking and angry. Because when that foothold is stuck there, The devil just has a heyday with that. And I mean, I remember being just, if I would be angry, I would be on the farthest end of my bed, like, I'm not going to talk to you. And I mean, that's crazy. You know, I'm the one that's shivering, you know, and being angry while he's having a nice restful sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah, like, or like, okay, delusional, who's that hurting? So, anyway, 28. Anyone who has been stealing must steal no longer, but must work doing something useful with their own hands, that they may have something to share with those in need. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. And do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, with whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice.
Because that's what's blocking us from God. We
Yeah.
have to get rid of that.
Yeah, he wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. He doesn't want us feeling like all that bitterness.
Exactly. So next is in the book of Mark 7:20 through 23. He went on, what comes out of a person is what defiles them. For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these evils come from inside and defile a person.
Romans 13:11 through 14. And do this, understanding the present time. The hour has already come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is nearly over, the day is almost here. So let us put aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. I like that.
Yes.
I feel powerful
Yeah.
when I have that armor on. Let us behave decently as in the daytime, not in carousing and drunkenness, not in sexual immorality and debauchery, not in dissension and jealousy. Rather, clothe yourself with the Lord Jesus Christ, and do not think about how to gratify the desires of the flesh.
Wow. That's all the
Yeah.
resentments right there.
There's no power in drunkenness. That's for darn sure.
Yep. All right, Corinthians 7:1. Therefore, since we have those promises, dear friend, let us purify ourselves from everything that contaminates body and spirit, perfecting holiness. So that's where we get the growth through the steps. You know, we have to identify where we've been wrong, and in the fifth step, let it go over to God.
Yeah.
Let Him know what you have done wrong.
Yeah. Galatians 5:13 through 23. You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free. Don't you love that word, free? I sure do. But do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. I didn't know how to do that. I don't think I knew what the word love meant. And so I really had to seek God and ask Him to teach me. You know, what does that mean? Freedom to indulge, not to indulge in the flesh. So I really had to seek God to find those answers. And when you seek Him, man, He'll show up.
Yes.
So 14, for the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. He had to teach me to love myself too, because I didn't know. I was too stuck in all those resentments and fears to love myself.
Exactly, or the
So-
people pleasing for me.
The people-pleasing.
To love myself, I would always worry about what others were doing instead of myself.
Yeah. And you can't give away what you don't have.
Exactly.
So He taught me that too, and I just love that God, myself, and others. You know, He teaches me that vertical relationship, teaches me how to have this horizontal relationship.
Oh, wow. I like that.
If you bite and devour each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. So I say, walk by the Spirit. And that's seeking God's love, God's peace, God's joy. And you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit is what's contrary to the flesh. I know that there's a lot going on right there. But my understanding is there's your angel and then there's the devil. We're going to flick that devil off the shoulder, right?
Exactly.
We don't want to listen to him. He makes me feel powerless. But the angel, God, Jesus makes me feel powerful, right? We're choosing to be powerful, not pitiful, right? We can't be both. So we're like, see you later. We're choosing power.
Yep.
So for the flesh desires what is contrary to the spirit, and the spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with one another, so that you are not to do whatever you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, that angel, you are not under the law. The acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, and debauchery, idolatry and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, self-ambition, dissension, faction, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Wow, love all that. Against such things there is no law.
That's great. It's even talking about the 12 steps in the beginning of the Galatians. Like, you have to help one another. Do not use your freedom selfishly. Give it away to someone else.
Yes, God put us together to be here for one another, not to go through life alone. Absolutely.
Exactly. Romans 6:16. Don't you know that when you offer yourself to someone as obedient slaves, you are slaves to the one you obey, whether you are slaves to sin, which leads to death, or to obedience, which leads to righteousness. Wow. So obedience to either your addiction, your alcohol, or obedience to God.
Yeah.
Yep.
I definitely was a slave to alcohol or people. Yeah, I didn't know.
Yep.
I didn't know that, but when I found out, man, I got busy doing my step work. So I'm like, I want that power, and I want that. I want to follow the one who really can show me how to be happy, joyous, and free, and that was God. Lamentations 3:40. Let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord.
Okay, great. So Mark 11:25. And when you stand praying, if you hold anything against anyone, forgive them, so that your Father in heaven may forgive you for your sin. How powerful is that? If anyone disregards you, disrespects you, forgive them. Realize you're spiritually sick.
Yeah.
Forgive them, so you will be forgiven.
Yeah. Luke 6:27-28. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. 28. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you.
And that's the resentment prayer right there. The resentment prayer that we have to pray for these people that have harmed us, that damage. That's a resentment prayer right there.
And as hard as, it's so hard, and I hear people say, it's so hard to, pray for them. And I so understand that. But it's not like God's saying, He wants them to know the truth. So if you pray for them to know the truth, it sets you free to enjoy your life, because that person that you're angry at, they're off having a good time. They only know you're angry.
They don't
so
even
it's
know
really
they're angry.
It's really hurting you, and it's hardening your heart. So you pray for them to see the truth, to see the light, instead of living in that darkness and anger that they're living in.
Awesome. So that's going to conclude the part 1 of our 4th step today. I'm so happy you were here with me.
Me too.
We are going to pick up next week with the fear, the sex inventory, things like that. I also want to do the invitation for everyone. Let me get that real quick. Okay, if you have made the decision and said that prayer with me for the first time, which we're going to read real quick, I'm going to read for everyone the prayer. If you would like to make Jesus your Lord and Savior and give your will and your life over to the care and protection, please say this prayer with me. Father God, I admit that I am a sinner, that I have done things wrong and I'm sorry.
I've done things wrong, I'm sorry.
I believe that Jesus did something
I believe that Jesus did something
about when he died
about when he died
on the cross
on the cross
for the forgiveness of those
for
sins.
the forgiveness of those sins.
Jesus, come into my heart.
Jesus, come into my heart.
I give you my life.
I give you my life.
I make you my Lord and my Savior.
I make you my Lord and my Savior.
Amen.
Amen.
If you have said that prayer and made this decision with me for the first time, please send us a private message so we can congratulate you and send you this Bible. I'm going to share the Bible with us. Please join us next week for part 2 of the 4th step. We will meet in person and also on Facebook. And like I said, it will just be the speakers on Facebook to keep the anonymity, of other people that are attending. But they will be at GCCC next week. The families are not open yet, the family sessions, but just the Chainbreakers recovery on the second part of the 4th step. So, like I said, I thank you guys for being here with us. I thank you, Angelina, for asking me and Chris to come out. It was great to be with you guys. Like I said, my name is Amanda. I'm an alcoholic.
Chris, alcoholic. Choose happy, joyous, and free.
Yes, thank you guys.